All right, Kathy. It's been a fun day, hasn't it? Well, as we close out today, we really wanted to do something a little special. And we want to have a conversation today with some of the people that we believe can kind of bring home the things we've talked about all day in terms of how do we make our state not only a better place, but how do we prepare our people here in our state, and particularly young people in many cases, to do that. So when Kathy and I were talking about how we wanted to do this, it really came up as kind of fun because I started my career as a sports writer. My athletic ability was so good, or my lack of athletic ability was so prevalent, that was the only way that I could be close to the game. And the result of it was, how do we really take that and move forward? So Kathy, when we were having that discussion initially, tell us what sparked this idea with you.
Well, what we realized is in the South and in Mississippi, we love sports. We love God and we love sports. And so we said, how can we tie all of this in together? We were talking about collaboration. We were talking about connecting. We were talking about diversity, bias. When we took the pulse of all of our members around the state, everybody that talked about the things that we're talking about around the state, the things that matter to us, they use sporting analogies. So I was like, hey, how can we tie this all together and make it a sporting annual meeting event with some of our top athletic professionals? And Scott, I think you don't give yourself enough credit, because if you checked your steps, I think we need a Letterman jacket in the chamber world. I think we are athletes.
We may be.
Oh, yeah.
And to Kathy's point is, we are very proud of our teams. We're very proud of it. But we know it's more than winning and losing. And I think that's why today's discussion is so excited. And we have some really great guests. And we're going to ask them to come on stage right now so we could talk to them about things they do and some of the takeaways that we can take from it as we go forward. Part of our discussion today will be Keith Carter. He's the Vice Chancellor of Intercollegiate Athletics at the University of Mississippi. Jenny Hazelwood, she's a women's volleyball coach at the University of Southern Mississippi. Tamika Reed, who is the women's basketball coach at Jackson State University. And then Wayne Mackin, a former quarterback at Mississippi State, and now is working at Entergy Services with their customer service innovation. So please welcome our guest. We appreciate y'all being here.
Thank you.
So I think I'm going to kick it off with Mr. Mack and Mr. Wayne Mackin over there. Y'all see that big smile, that quarterback smile over there. And so we're going to start out, we're just going to say two words, Snow Bowl. And so for those that are not Mississippi State fans or don't know about the Snow Bowl, this was the Independence Bowl in 2000.
Yeah, I think you're about right.
Do you think that's about right? About 2000. And so let me just kind of put it out there for you so you can kind of get the picture in your head. They were playing against the Aggies, right? And so they went into the game 14 points down, Mississippi State. And then at the end, in the fourth quarter, 8 minutes left, Mr. Mackin over here, it was 6 yards, maybe?
So much snow, I cannot even remember where I was.
So it was so much snow. There was snow there. They started out 2 inches of snow that they couldn't see the lines on the field. And so Mr. Mackin said he was just running. And he said he didn't realize he made the winning touchdown in overtime until he had everybody jumping on him and he couldn't breathe. And so when we were talking about this in Wayne, they said you've never played in the snow before at all.
Never.
Before this.
Nope.
And this matchup with these two players dated back, this is on their 5th matchup since 1912, something like that. And so they had, and I think you guys got a pretty good whooping, like 47-12. So they had something to prove. And Wayne was our hero there. So to talk about business and to tie that all in, let's talk about adaptability. Talk about adapting to different environments, evolving environments, changes. How do you do that, and how do you use those parallels with sports and what you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kathy, for that, and pleasure being here with this esteemed group. First of all, the Snow Bowl was amazing. It was cold, southern boy. I'm from Alabama, played in Mississippi, hot heat. You know, you don't get a lot of snow, right? So, but the biggest thing, what I've learned during that game, and I've taken that on in my professional career now, is that in sports, you got to adapt or die. In reference, adapt or lose. In corporate America, you got to be able to differentiate yourself from your competitor. And if you're not, you're going to fail long term. So one thing as far as my thing that I brought into it as far as being on a high-performance team. We talk about that a lot in corporate America, about identifying a high-performance team. One of the things you have to have in a high-performance team is to be able to adapt and be able to have adaptability in your culture. One thing that brings to my nature is different between sports and business is that every so often, every couple of years you get rookies, you get freshmen come in, and you got to change, you got to have a different identity. In corporate America, you have a steady flow of leadership, hopefully, right? But the biggest thing what I've learned as far as creating a high-performance team and leading a high-performance team is being able to be part of that culture and be able to create it. And you got to have a standard and a process, right? You got to have a standard and a process that is sustainable for leaders. Because one of the things that I've learned as far as leading teams or high-performance teams is you have to be able to have a change process with that. Individual leadership has to have a change management process. One of the processes that I try to do is I call it the direct model: deny, resistance, experiment, and commitment. And going back to the Snow Bowl, nobody knew it was going to drop. 7 inches, Scott, maybe? And so just going back to that model, deniability, there's no way it's going to snow in Shreveport, Louisiana, right? There's no way. So you go through that process, you go through that resistance. Well, I'm going to continue to do what I do. But then you realize the game has changed, the environment has changed. So you have to be able to experiment new things. Go on the fly. We talk about the Sabans of the world, how they adjust in halftime. It's the same thing. You have to be able to adjust. And then you get to the C in commitment. What I found in my time here is that the difference between high-performance teams and teams that do not reach that level is that they get stuck between their R and their E. When they hit resistance, they stop. And they're not able to push through towards that experiment and creating a culture where your teammates and your employees are able to accept that change and roll with it. So that helps.
Thank you, Wayne.
Wayne, you touched on some things there, adaptability. And Coach Reed, I want to kind of talk about that with you. Great success at Jackson State, SWAC champions, Coach of the Year. But I was reading an article just a couple of months ago where you basically were talking about adaptability. You went into the season this year knowing you had to think about, one, what was your non-conference schedule going to look like to help make your team better? What were you going to do in terms of changing your offense, changing your defense, what your recruiting philosophy would be? Obviously, you have success, but if you're going to build on that success, you cannot stop. You've got to continue to focus on adapting to not only your players, but the style and all that. Talk a little bit about that process as a coach when you're thinking about how do you do that and how that would relate to what we can do in our everyday lives.
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, at Jackson State, before I can get to develop those values and how to adapt and what needed to change, we played LSU last year in the NCAA tournament. This was a team that nobody thought we could compete against. And with 3 minutes to go in the game, we were up 10 points. And then the whistle began to blow. My best player got in foul trouble. I had nobody to come off the bench to kind of take us over that hump to beat the team, the number 3 team at their home place, to do something that's never been done. We was that close to doing that. And so after we lost the game by 6 points to LSU, which is now the national champions, I sat back and I began to think, we're gonna come back to this point, but the next time we get here, I wanna make sure we're great. And so I began to identify things that were needed for us to be successful, and that was a bigger roster. We needed bigger players. We had to recruit better athletes. We had to recruit tougher athletes. And we also, I had to change my offense. I wanted to change my defense. I just did not want to be dominant in the SWAC conference. I wanted to be really dominant outside of the SWAC, against Power 5 institutions, against predominantly white institutions. I wanted us to be very competitive and dominant in that field as well. So I was able to look at those things that needed to be changed, and we made those changes. We recruited a 6'6" post player from USC in California who came over and did great things for us. We recruited a 6'5" post player, a 6'2" guard. I mean, we got bigger and bigger. We got stronger. We won a Power 5 game this year against Texas Tech. That's the goal. But we also had to focus on the mental toughness. We had to move to that. We had to be more mentally tough. We had to be more disciplined. All of those things are really important. We had to have better leadership. We had to focus on that as well. When you have continuous success in a business or in an athletic program, you cannot reflect and just sit and think about what you did well. You gotta quickly move to, how do I continue to be better? How can I stay dominant? And that was the process for us. Changing the offense, recruiting better players, becoming mentally tougher, more disciplined, bringing in better leaders, and keeping our composure. So the next time the whistle blows and it's not in our favor, we keep our composure and push forward.
I'm getting goosebumps here because when you think coach, the first thing you think of is men. And so we were very intentional when we said we wanted people on the panel, and this we wanted to have, when people saw coach, they saw women here. And so this is a crazy feeling for me. So I'm going to be honest with you, Jenny. I told her today, I said, for the longest, I didn't know your name. I knew you as Allie's mom. And so how many of you can relate to your identity being taken by the people you love and care about the most? We're nobody. We're our kids' parents. And so her daughter and my daughter went to school together. So I was like, Jordan, what is Allie's mom's name? She's like, Mom, her name is Miss Jenny. So Coach Jenny, I'm just going to tell you, were ESPN analyst, coach, volleyball coach, business owner, one of the largest volleyball schools in the state. How do you balance that? How do you connect all of those together with the analyst knowing the game, knowing the rules, understanding the rules, put that into coaching, and then running a business, and then you have a daughter that's 6'2", 6'3", at USC playing volleyball, and she left school early. So parenting, coaching, analyzing things. Let's talk about it. How do you pull all that together?
Thank you, Kathy. It's a lot, and we have a lot of support from our families. So my husband, Brian Hazelwood, is a native. He's from Clinton, and we work very well together. My time with ESPN, so I coached for 15 years before I was an analyst with ESPN, and it was amazing to not just see and analyze what's happening in these matches, but talking to the other coaches and seeing how other leaders, coaches, operate and build their program. How are you trying to, get to the next level based on where you are right now? And just having those connections. And the more, people in any business, so it's the same in athletics, you just have resources. And I'm the kind of person that loves to ask questions. Hey, so, how would you deal with, we're struggling with this with our team in volleyball. So what are some things that you guys have done? So that, I think, was a huge piece for me. I'm a lifetime learner. I love to learn, so I'm going to ask questions. And so then getting back into coaching, there's plenty of things that I have brought that I, just from talking to other college coaches about just the way they do things with their programs. So learning from others has been huge. We started Infinity Volleyball Academy back in 2016, and now we have a new building in Ridgeland, 8 courts. It's been really awesome. Now that I'm at Southern Miss, NCAA rules don't allow me to do anything with the club, so Brian runs it. But he and I we have been on the same page since we got here. And in the time starting and running the club, it's so much about people. And I think that in any business setting, your people are your assets and your values and what you need to be successful. So with our business, it was super important for us to understand and take care of our coaches because they made, the experience what it was for each team. And then genuinely caring about all the athletes. And, now, goodness, I think we have 27 teams. So there's a lot of athletes, but they're getting to live out their dreams. My daughter's at USC, like she said, but her love is to come back home. And she wants to come back home and coach and run the club. And so just what Mississippi has brought to a lot of the athletes with the club to just opportunities. Wayne's daughter is playing volleyball at Arkansas. And so Mississippi has not been known as a volleyball hotbed, but that's changed. And so it's been really cool to see those opportunities for young women to be able to reach their dreams.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny.
Speaking of reaching dreams, Keith, that's really what you do every day, I guess. I mean, you were a star basketball player. We all knew your experience on the court, but now you run a multi-million-dollar athletic department. And there's a lot of pieces and parts to that. There's a lot of things that you have to do in terms of bringing people together, finding the right people, whether it's coaches, administrators, or having the things in place to recruit the players. Talk a little bit about how that works for you and getting all those different parts that are out there at your university to have a common goal as you go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you have a big organization, making sure that you have a vision that everybody understands is important. You have to be clear with that, and you have to be precise. And we have about 425 student athletes, about 260 employees in the Ole Miss Athletics Department. And so, when you start talking about, the things you want to accomplish and the things you want to do and the culture that you want to set, I think as the leader, you have to be, again, very clear with that. And so while the leader, I think, needs to be very clear, I think then it just comes down to the people that you have around you. And I think it's so important that you surround yourself with great people that are good at their jobs, and then you let them do their jobs. I think that them having ownership of that vision and trying to show that they're a part of it and that they are a part of it is so important. I think culture's always been really important in any organization, and morale and all those things that go along with that. But I think now it's probably more important than it's ever been. 20, 30 years ago, if somebody was in an organization, a lot of times they felt like, hey, I'm here. I'm a part of this organization. I'm gonna spend my career here. Now, young people and a lot of people have options. They move around and they wanna make sure that they're in a situation that's good for them, for their family, for their careers. And so it's easy that if you don't have a good culture and a culture that people wanna be a part of and feel comfortable in and have a good time, doing their job every day, they'll go somewhere else. And so I think for us in Ole Miss Athletics, we certainly want to make sure, first and foremost, that we're taking care of our 425 student athletes. We want to make sure that they have a great experience, get a great education, win a lot of games, feel like they're a part of our family. But also for our employees, we want to make sure that every day they have professional development opportunities, that they feel like they're taking ownership of what we want to do in Ole Miss Athletics. And I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm not an expert in a lot of the things we do in athletics. That's why we want to hire great people to do those jobs and let them do those jobs. But I do think that it's very important that everybody feels like they're a part of the process, a part of decision making, and certainly a part of that culture.
Thank you, Keith. You talked about culture. You said that a lot, and they describe culture as when you talk about an organization culture, this is the way we do things here. So how with bringing athletes in your different sports across the board, how do you bring them all together from diverse backgrounds? Diverse, we're talking about social economics, age, all of that, not age, but just race. How do you develop a culture that includes everyone in it and make them feel comfortable to win games and to build strong teams? One of the sessions we went to while traveling, checking the pulse, they said they want to be recruited like they recruit the starting quarterback. And once you bring them in and you have these different people together, how do you work to make sure the culture is aligned for everyone?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's not necessarily an easy answer. I think that sports, in its own way, does that by itself in a lot of ways. I think that you certainly, on 13 guys on a basketball team, 85 guys on a football team, 15 young ladies on a women's basketball team. Nobody's coming from the same environment, right, for the most part. And so that's why you want to hire great coaches. You want to bring in great coaches that understand how to do that, how to mesh and blend in those different personalities and different backgrounds. And it's hard. It's hard. And so, I think when you find that coach in whatever respective program that can do that, that's why you want to make sure you hold on to that coach and let them build their program organically and do it the right way. And hopefully they'll be there for a while. But it's very important, and I do think that that's the beauty of sports in a lot of ways, is that, I had an opportunity after Ole Miss to go overseas and play basketball for a few years, and I had a teammate that was from Brooklyn, New York. I'm from Perryville, Arkansas, population 900. He's from Brooklyn, New York. We didn't have much in common. But as we got to know each other, guess what? We became great friends. We still talk to each other to this day. We were brothers out on that court. And so I just think sports has a way of doing that. I think in business, there's so much that you can learn from the experiences you've had in sports. And I think every single day as we do our jobs, we want to make sure that our young men and young women understand that.
And I think that's the great thing about what we're talking about today, because we're trying to figure out how do you mold all that together to be successful. And Wayne, I just want to ask you, first of all, I want to say, I didn't think somebody could outdo me with the socks, but you did. But Eddie, those are gorgeous. But you were the quarterback, and the quarterback is the one that gets all the attention. But there's 11 of you on the field. You had to work together. How did that experience prepare you to building the teams that you have to now build in the business world each and every day?
Yeah, so great question. Just to coattail off of the previous thing is one variable that I've learned and identified when creating these high performance teams, or when you find that great coach that can mesh and get things together. As a quarterback, you got 10 other guys on the field, different backgrounds, different social economic background, politics, whatever you want to call it. But you got to figure out, how can I get this together for one common goal to get across the end zone so the band can strike up our fight song. And it's tough. One thing I always say, one variable that comes into play that can carry along the business is trust. At the end of the day, it's about trust. Can a coach sell something and the players can trust what that coach is saying? Can the player trust the person next to him? Do your job, and can I trust them? And that takes a long time to build, and so quick of a snap of your finger to destroy. So when you're creating that culture, when you're going and you're trying to create a program, not just a one-year flame and die, but a program, it starts with sustainability and the trust, and it starts with that leader. So one thing I've learned, Scott, is when you're that guy, quote unquote, you take the good, you take the bad, but the biggest thing is, can your teammates count on you day in and day out? Can your teammates trust you? Are you a known commodity to them? Because once you start adding all these other variables into play, I don't know whether or not this person is going to be here when I make this out route. Is that ball going to be there when I make that cut? Is that running back going to pick up that middle linebacker? It's taking you off your game. So you have to be able to create a culture where I trust you and you trust me. Same thing in business. Are you double checking the work? Are you sure that person is going and hitting that account like he's supposed to? All these things come into play when you're trying to create a high performance team. And being that leader, Scott, you have to be able to be that steady Eddie and being able to build that trust among the team and to be able to sustain it, and so it can continue on.
Thank you, Wayne. So I have a question for both of our coaches, but I'm gonna lead when I think our military people would like this. Mission first, people always. And so when you think about that, and you think that's across the board. So we talked about the mission. The mission is winning. And if you don't win, the mission is figuring out how you can win the next time. Let's talk about the people. Beyond beyond the court, beyond all of the winning, what do you teach these young ladies that are looking up to you as coaches outside of that, the people side of it? We talked the mission. Let's talk about the people. What would you tell these young women to inspire them to say, this is what's next?
Well, one thing, and I think it's been a theme here, is that from the beginning, I've really tried to, and my staff, establish that it is great that we have different kinds of people from all backgrounds and from all different parts of the country, and they support each other and embrace each other in that. And we talk openly about that, how valuable it is to have different people on our team. If we had a team full of just this one kind of player, we wouldn't be successful. And so the fact that, you know, we've got the balance that we do is a big part of what allows us to move forward. And when you talk about how as females are we, you know, maybe a role model for our athletes, it was actually really cool. On my birthday, my assistant had our players go around and say one positive thing about me, and I've never had anybody do that. And some of the things that stood out to me that they said, you know, one of them is a girl from California, and she was like, I love that as a female you've run businesses, you've started businesses, you lead this program, and I just look up to you for that. And I think just them seeing, I'm a mom, they see my kids, they know that we value family, and okay, yeah, you can be a mom and value family and still go and lead this group of young women to do some great things. And so that was a really cool experience for me, because there were so many different things my players said that it impacted them, and how I have had an influence on them in the short time I've been at Southern Miss. And it's really neat, because I think that just if you're genuine to who you are and open as a leader, you know, that they're going to see all of you. And I think that's important, because, I mean, in life, you know, nothing's perfect. So when they see how you as a leader handle the tough stuff and the good stuff and all that, it's just something that those athletes can look up to.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. Coach
Yeah,
Reed?
for us, you know, it's really important that my players, when they come in, they leave better than they came in. And I'm really big on mental toughness. I'm really big on being resilient. And I'm really big on, you know, being a leader and keeping your composure. Positive attitude is really important. And so, you know, I lead that in myself. That's who I am. That's what my players get an opportunity to see. You know, at our level, it's not so much about wins and losing. It's about being able to provide quality experiences and to prepare our young ladies for life after college. We are their last stop before they move on into the business world, into the corporations, into, you know, being entrepreneurs. We're the last stop, and so we like to make sure our players are prepared for that. So they get a chance to see in me a coach who travels with my son, who is a type 1 diabetic, constantly taking care of him and making sure they're taken care of. Being able to see the strength in that. Being able to see when you face a challenge, you don't give up, you find a way to push through. You know, I like to provide that for them as well. And when they have those challenging moments, being able to talk them through that and coach them through that prepares them for life after college. And we also do a lot of things, my staff and I, in terms of making sure the players have financial literacy, making sure they do a lot of community service. We make sure our players have life coaches, therapists. We make sure they have all of those things, because those components are really important for them as they venture into life and into the business force. So we like to be able to give that to our players and be the role models that they need.
Well, thank you. We have just a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to make this just kind of a rapid fire type of question. If you could give this audience one piece of advice of what you do in the sports world every day that they need to implement to make their business better, to make their leadership better, what would that be? And Keith, we'll start with you and just go down the line.
Well, I don't like giving advice, first of all. But I think it comes down to teamwork. You know, I mean, that's what has, I've always loved being a part of a team. You know, I think people ask me when I quit playing, you know, do you miss playing? I said, no, I don't really miss playing, but I miss being in the locker room. I miss being a part of a team. And I think that's when you get the best results. You know, when you allow everybody to take part of it and feel like they're a part of what you're doing, I just think you get a lot better results. And so we try to do that at Ole Miss Athletics. And again, I keep using the word ownership, but you know, making sure that everybody feels like they're a part of the solution. I just feel like that's something that, you know, at the end of the day is going to help you accomplish a lot more.
I would say think big. I would say have big goals. Want to accomplish some things that people say you can't accomplish. Want to accomplish some things that the necessary resources needed may not be available. Think big and go after it. That's something that we do within our program. We think big. Winning the first round of the NCAA tournament is what we want to do. We are really close and it's going to happen. But a lot of people don't think we can. But we think bigger. And so I will leave that with you guys. Always think big and do the impossible.
And I would, of course, you know, obviously some great answers there, but just go back to people. I think every team, I know every team is going to be as successful as they can based on how they mesh, how they work together, how they do all. We don't get to go on the court and play, so how do they take the instruction and put it all together? And I think that's, you know, the people in any business, they're the ones that are doing the work, you know, and as leaders, we may not do all the things that they're doing, just like in sports. As a coach, I don't get to play in the games. So what have I done to prepare them? And again, it's been so valuable for our program that everybody understands and embraces that people are different, and we value the differences in each other, so that, you know, we know people are coming from different places, different backgrounds, but we all have a common goal, and so we support each other, even though, you know, we may be from different parts of the country or whatever, and then that just drives so much more on the court, and it you know, that's very applicable to any business, I think.
From my lens, which I think is different, is coming from Alabama to Mississippi to play and going to Scott Field and seeing how it was a little bit smaller. Then all of a sudden you start winning and things start getting built, right? And taking it to the state of Mississippi, seeing what we're trying to do in the state of Mississippi, but also in business as well, what we're doing, even in our company right now. Two things that stick out in my mind that I've taken from my discipline: innovation and marketing. If you cannot, those are the two things that consumers will pay for, whether you're looking in from inward customer centricity role, but two things is innovation and marketing. And if you have to innovate in your day-to-day activities, you know, you have to innovate. If you look at the game of sports now, you know, first it was a wishbone, then it came to a pro set, right? Now they throwing the ball every daggone where, you know, back in my time, you know, it was if somebody had a 50 or 59% completion ratio, they were pretty good, but now these kids are doing 60 and 70%. They're continuing to innovate, right? And the other thing is marketing. People will pay for that. If you go to your colleges now, it's a weekend experience. You know, sometimes, hopefully your team wins, but at the end of the day, they had a heck of a time. So you have to continue to innovate. You have to continue to understand that marketing is very important, particularly to your organization, to your institution. And lastly, I would like to share is be a multiplier and not a diminisher. What I've learned as far as leading people and being a part of different core groups and teams, you know, as a leader, you want to make sure you're a multiplier where you're getting the best out of your people. You know, sometimes, you know, people, you think, you know, they may be getting 50 or 60%, but can you get 100, 110% out of your people? How can you influence them to give you everything they got? So working on being that multiplier for your teams and your organization and for the state of Mississippi will help.
Well, thank y'all so much. Well, listen, I want to thank our panel. Would y'all give them a round of applause? What a great opportunity to hear their perspective, the things that we can apply in our day in and day out lives. We thank you for being here. We look forward to getting started, Kathy, with our next round.
Yes.
And tying all of our meetings together. Hobnob is set for October the 26th. CAP Day is January the 4th. And annual meeting next year will be April the 18th. Mark your calendars, come be a part of that, and let's continue to move Mississippi in a positive direction. Thank y'all for being here. Our annual meeting is adjourned.